My daughter has always had a talent for picking the wrong men, and I've spent 30 years learning to bite my tongue about it. But what I saw last Easter Sunday made me put down my tongue and pick up the phone instead. She arrived at my front door at noon with a casserole dish in her hands and her boyfriend walking 2 steps behind her, the way he always did. Not to be gentlemanly, I'd come to realize, but to watch her. My daughter is 51 years old. She has laugh lines around her eyes that she earned, silver at her temples she refuses to die, and a warmth that fills a room the moment she walks in. Her name is Audrey. And for the past 3 years, she had been with a man named Stephen. Stephen shook my hand the way men do when they want you to know they're strong, firm, a half-second too long. He had that particular smile that never quite reached his eyes. Pleasant on the surface, but somehow exhausting to be around, like music played just slightly too loud. "Smells wonderful in here, Helen," he said, using my first name the way he always did. Never Mum, never Mrs. Whitfield, always Helen, like we were colleagues in an office somewhere. I said thank you and took the casserole into the kitchen. My other daughter, Pam, was already there with her husband, and my grandson, Eli, was in the backyard throwing a ball for the dog. It was the kind of afternoon I had spent 67 years collecting, sunlight through yellow curtains, something roasting in the oven, family filling up the quiet rooms of my house. I should have let myself have that afternoon. I almost did. It was around 2 o'clock when I went upstairs to get an extra tablecloth from the hall closet. The bathroom door at the end of the hall was cracked open slightly, and I heard Audrey's voice, low and careful, the way you speak when you don't want to be heard. "I was just helping Pam with the salad," she was saying. "I didn't have my phone on me." A pause. "I know, I'm sorry. I'll keep it on me." Another pause, longer this time. "I said I'm sorry, Stephen." I stood very still with my hand on the closet door. I wasn't eavesdropping, or maybe I was by the end of it. But what made me go cold wasn't the words, it was the tone. My daughter, who once argued back at her high school principal without blinking, who once told a supervisor to go straight to hell and walked out with her head high, was apologizing for being away from her phone for 20 minutes while she was in the same house as her mother. I got the tablecloth and went back downstairs. Dinner was the kind of meal that looks fine in photographs. The food was good, Eli made everyone laugh twice, and Pam's husband told a long story about a fishing trip that went sideways. But I watched Audrey the whole time. I watched the way she glanced at Stephen before she finished a sentence. I watched her reach for the wine bottle and then stop, change her mind, reach for her water glass instead. I watched Stephen put his hand over hers at one point, a gesture that would look like affection to anyone else in the room. And I watched Audrey's shoulders drop a quarter inch, like something had just been confirmed. I know my daughter's body language the way I know my own handwriting. I have known it since she was 3 years old, and what I saw that afternoon was a woman who had learned to make herself smaller in the presence of a particular person. I didn't say anything that night. I carried the dishes to the sink, said my goodbyes at the door, and stood on my porch watching their car back down the driveway. Stephen was driving. Audrey was in the passenger seat looking straight ahead. For the next 2 weeks, I couldn't sleep past 5 in the morning. I called Pam on a Tuesday. She's the practical one, my younger daughter, a high school vice principal, organized, no nonsense. I asked her, as casually as I could manage, what she thought of Stephen. There was a silence that told me everything. "He's fine," she said. "Audrey seems happy." "Does she?" I said. Another silence. "Mom," Pam said slowly, "what did you see?" I told her about the phone call in the bathroom. I told her about the way Audrey had watched his face before she spoke. Pam was quiet for a long time. Then she said that a few months ago, she had invited Audrey to a weekend trip to Asheville with some friends, and Audrey had said yes, and then cancelled the day before with no explanation, and then cancelled again the next time. And the time after that. "She used to call me twice a week," Pam said. Now it's maybe once a month if I chase her down. I sat with that for a long time after we hung up. Here is something I want to say plainly, because the comment sections of these stories are full of people who ask why women don't just leave. Isolation doesn't look like a locked door. It looks like a series of small, reasonable adjustments. It looks like staying close to home because he worries about you. It looks like letting old friendships drift because it's just easier that way. It looks like checking in again before you go anywhere because he loves you and he just wants to know you're safe. My daughter is not a foolish woman. She has a master's degree. She has a 401k. She raised 2 boys on her own after her first marriage ended and never asked anyone for a cent. The women who end up in these situations are not foolish. They are women who loved someone who learned exactly how to use that love against them. I called Audrey on a Sunday afternoon when I knew Stephen would be at his weekly golf game. He golfed every Sunday, one of the few fixed hours in the week I could count on. Audrey picked up on the second ring, and her voice had a looseness to it that I hadn't heard in a long time. We talked for almost an hour about nothing important, a book she was reading, a recipe she'd tried, a memory she had of a vacation we'd taken when she and Pam were teenagers. I laughed more during that call than I had in months, and then, near the end, I heard a door open in the background. Her voice shifted. "I should go," she said. "Of course," I said. "I love you, sweetheart." "Love you too," she said, quieter, and hung up. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after that. I thought about what I knew and what I didn't know. I thought about what Pam had said. I thought about the way Audrey's voice changed the moment that door opened, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to call Stephen out. I wasn't going to stage some confrontation at the next family dinner. I had seen enough of these situations, through friends, through the years, through hard experience, to know that confronting a controlling man in front of the woman he controls rarely helps the woman. It puts her in the position of defending him afterward, just to survive the next few days. What I needed was to get to my daughter alone. Audrey's birthday was in June. She turned 52 and Stephen had made reservations at a nice restaurant in Charlotte where they lived. I drove up the Friday before, which was not unusual. I'd been doing birthday weekend visits for years, and I took her to lunch, just the 2 of us, while Stephen was at work. We went to a Thai place she loved. We sat in a corner booth and I let her order for the table the way she always did, because she knew the menu better than anyone. We talked about Eli's soccer season and whether Pam was ever going to repaint her kitchen and the novel Audrey had been working her way through for 3 months. And then I said quietly, "Can I ask you something, and will you hear me out before you say anything?" She put down her fork. "Of course," she said, but her voice had that careful quality again. "I've been watching you for a few months," I said, "and I've been noticing some things. Not accusations, not judgments, just things I've noticed as your mother. The way you check your phone when we're together. The way you apologize, sometimes for things that don't need an apology. The way you've gotten a little quieter, a little smaller, over the past couple of years." I stopped. "I'm not asking you to tell me anything you don't want to tell me. I'm asking if you're okay." She didn't say anything for a long moment. She was looking at her plate. "I'm fine," she said. "Okay," I said. Mum, I'm not going to push," I said. "I just want you to know that whatever you tell me, I'm on your side. Not on the side of keeping the peace. Not on the side of what looks good. On your side." She didn't say anything. She picked up her fork. I picked up mine. We finished lunch and talked about other things. I paid the check and we walked out into the June heat, and she took my arm and we walked to the car together. In the car, before I started the engine, she said, "He checks my phone." I didn't react. I kept my hands on the steering wheel and looked straight ahead through the windshield. "He has the passcode," she said. "He asks me to leave it unlocked when we're home. If I don't respond to a message within a few minutes, he wants to know why. He tracks my location. He says it's because he worries. Because he loves me." She paused. "Sometimes I believe that. Most times I believe that. But, I said. But, she said. She told me things over the next 20 minutes that I will not repeat in their entirety because they are hers to carry. But I will say this, none of it was dramatic in the way that people expect abuse to be dramatic. There had been no bruises, no broken dishes, no screaming. There had been instead a steady pressure applied over time. Cancelled plans, quietly. Friends who had drifted away because it was always just easier to stay home. Her older son, who didn't like Stephen and had said so once, no longer came to family dinners. Money that Audrey earned from her freelance consulting work that she routed through their joint account, because Stephen had suggested it was more efficient, and she hadn't known how to unsuggest it. She looked out the window when she was done talking. "I know how it sounds," she said. "It sounds exactly like what it is," I said. "And I want you to know that I have been sitting in this thing with you for 30 minutes, and I am not scared of it, and I am not going anywhere." She cried then. Not a lot. Audrey is not a lot of crying kind of woman, but enough. I handed her the travel pack of tissues I keep in the glove compartment, and I did not say anything while she cried, because sometimes silence is the better kindness. When she was done, she said, "I don't know what to do." "You don't have to know right now," I said. "You don't have to do anything today, but I want you to do one thing for me." "What?" "Talk to someone. A professional. Not because something is wrong with you, because you deserve someone in your corner who knows more than I do about how to get out of this safely." She was quiet. "There is a national hotline," I said. "It's called the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233. You can text it if you don't want to call. They don't push you. They don't tell you what to do. They just help you think through your options." I had written the number on a card the week before and tucked it into my wallet, because I am the kind of woman who prepares. I handed it to her. She looked at it for a long time. "Okay," she said. "Okay." She put the card in her jacket pocket. We drove back to her neighborhood. She got out of the car and hugged me at the curb, longer than usual, and then she went inside. I drove to my hotel, and I sat on the edge of the bed for a while. What happened after that was not fast, and it was not clean. These things never are. Audrey didn't leave Stephen that weekend or that month. She called the hotline eventually. She told me later in pieces over several phone calls. She talked to a counselor. She talked to a lawyer, a family law attorney in Charlotte, who her counselor referred her to, because in North Carolina the financial entanglement matters when you're trying to leave safely. She quietly separated her consulting income from the joint account over a period of 3 months with the lawyer's guidance. She talked to her older son. I didn't push. That is possibly the hardest thing I have ever done in my life, knowing what I knew and not pushing. But her counselor had been clear that the decision had to be hers, at her own pace, and that outside pressure, even well-meaning pressure, can sometimes make a controlled woman pull back inside herself rather than out. What I did was stay. I called on Sundays when I knew Stephen was golfing. I sent her articles sometimes, not about abuse, just things she'd find interesting, little threads of the world outside her apartment. I told her I loved her, and I meant it without conditions. I let her call the shots on timing. 7 months after that lunch, Audrey moved out of the apartment she shared with Stephen. She moved into a short-term furnished rental, 2 miles from her older son's house. Stephen called me once, about a week after she left, to tell me that I had interfered in his relationship and that I should be ashamed of myself. I told him very calmly that I'd simply had lunch with my daughter and listened to what she had to say. I told him I wished him well, and then I hung up the phone. Audrey has her own apartment now. Her name is on the lease and on the bank account and on the utilities the way names should be. She has been in therapy for over a year, and she talks about it openly, without embarrassment, the way you talk about something that is working. Her older son came to Thanksgiving this past November and sat at the table and laughed and argued about football with Pam's husband, and I watched Audrey watch him from across the table with an expression on her face that I haven't seen in years. She looked like herself. People ask me sometimes if I regret anything, if I should have said something sooner, acted faster, pushed harder. I've spent time with that question. Probably I noticed things earlier than that Easter dinner and told myself I was imagining it. Probably I gave him the benefit of the doubt a few times I shouldn't have. But I also know that the moment I tried to force the timeline, to make her move before she was ready, I could have lost her. And losing her was the one outcome I was not willing to risk. I am 67 years old and I have learned that love does not always look like action. Sometimes it looks like a booth in a Thai restaurant and a card with a phone number on it and showing up quietly over and over until the person you love is ready to take her own hand and walk herself out. Audrey turns 53 this June. We have already made a reservation, just the two of us, same Thai place. She's going to order for the table. I can't wait. I keep coming back to that moment in the hallway. The tablecloth in my hands, the bathroom door cracked open, my daughter's voice saying I'm sorry for something that needed no apology. That moment didn't feel dramatic. It felt like a small, quiet wrong note in the middle of an otherwise ordinary afternoon, and I almost walked past it. What I've learned, slowly, the hard way, over 67 years, is that the things that matter most rarely announce themselves. They don't come with sirens. They come as a slightly dropped shoulder, a glance across a dinner table, a pause before a sentence that used to come easy. Stephen never raised his voice in my presence. He was polite, he was presentable, and he was quietly dismantling my daughter, one small adjustment at a time. That's the part that's hardest to explain to people who haven't seen it up close. The damage that looks like nothing from the outside. I think about what it took for Audrey to sit in that Thai restaurant and tell me the truth. She is not a woman who asks for help easily. She built her life by figuring things out herself, and somewhere along the way Stephen had used that self-reliance against her, made her feel like needing help was weakness, like the problems she was experiencing were just her own overreactions. It takes a particular kind of courage to name something you've spent years explaining away. The moment she said he checks my phone, she wasn't just telling me a fact. She was deciding, maybe for the first time, to trust her own perception of what was happening to her. That's what I want people to take from this. Not the specifics of what Stephen did, but the idea that knowing something is wrong and being able to say it out loud are two completely different acts. Audrey knew, on some level, long before that lunch. She is a smart woman. But knowledge alone doesn't move you. What moves you is someone sitting across a booth and saying, I see it. I'm not scared of it. I'm not going anywhere. Wisdom isn't just information. It's knowing when to speak and what to say and how to say it so the person in front of you can actually hear it. And the staying. I want to talk about the staying because I think it's the part that gets left out of these stories. Audrey didn't leave in a week. She left in 7 months. Every Sunday phone call, every article I forwarded, every time I said I love you without an agenda attached. That was the work. Not dramatic, not fast, just persistent. I think persistence is one of the most underrated things a person can offer someone they love. Not pushing, not fixing, just refusing to disappear. What happened to Audrey was not her fault. What she did next, calling that hotline, finding a lawyer, reclaiming her own name on her own accounts, walking out, that was entirely, beautifully hers. I got to watch it happen, which is one of the great privileges of my life. She is sitting in her own apartment right now, I imagine, reading a book she chose herself, with her phone on silent if she wants it that way. I think that's what freedom looks like most of the time. Not a grand gesture, just a phone on silent, on a quiet evening in a room that belongs to you.